Greetings. I'd like to welcome everyone in our audience today. We are very grateful that you have chosen to share some of your busy day with us. We know that your time is valuable, and we'll honor that today with what I am confident will be an engaging discussion. Once again, our topic is Banking's Digital Future, Accelerating Transformation in Financial Services. Our sponsor today is Workday. Our host is American Banker, and my name is Mike Sisk. I'm a contributing editor at American Banker, and I will be your moderator today. My articles have also appeared in Barron's, Crane's New York Business, Inc., Institutional Investor, Strategy of Business, and Worth. And I am very, very pleased to introduce our three speakers today. Peter Polini is the first up here. As PwC's Banking and Capital Markets Consulting Leader, Peter is focused on supporting clients as they manage the complexities of today's regulatory, financial, and constantly changing business needs. With a background in consumer banking, he advises PwC's financial services clients on a range of topics, including strategy, regulatory enforcement, transaction management, operational excellence, and innovation. In addition to his responsibilities overseeing PwC's BCM practice, Peter has also served as practice leader for PwC's financial markets practice, Consumer Finance Group, and co-founded PwC's Consumer Lending Innovation Center. And just very pleased to have Peter with us today. And joining him is Brett Greenstein. Brett is a partner, data and AI, and generative AI go-to-market leader at PwC US. He has worked for over 25 years helping clients to transform through the adoption of new technologies, including AI, data, Internet of Things, and cloud, to deliver new business models and new ways of working. He joined PwC from Cognizant, where he was the SVP and global head of AI and analytics. And prior to that, he worked in IBM as a P&L leader for multiple software and service brands. And he was the CIO for IBM's growth markets based in China. So also very delighted to have Brett with us today. And rounding things out, Jim Cahagan. Jim is a senior director and leads financial services industry solution marketing for Workday. He is responsible globally for Workday's financial services marketing strategy and execution for Workday's financial management and human capital management solutions. With over 30 years of managerial and consulting experience in financial information systems management, Jim is skilled in the effective use of information technology to solve complex business problems, particularly within large financial services organizations. So there you have it. Those are our three panelists today. It's going to be a very good hour of discussion here. Just before we jump into things, wanted to just reiterate one thing that was in that opening video, and that is we do have time at the end for Q&A. You can put your question in throughout the hour as it occurs to you. You don't have to wait until the end. So please, as the question pops into your head, get that into the queue, and we'll make every effort to get to it. But if we don't get to it, we'll definitely follow up after the program. So, please ask away. We very much want to hear from you. And we're going to start off. We're going to have a little bit later in the program. We're going to have a roundtable discussion with all three of our panelists. But to sort of lead things off, each of them is going to be sharing some insights and some thought leadership. So, with that, I think I would officially like to hand things over to Peter. Peter, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Mike. And hello, everyone. It's great to be here again with American Banker and also here again with Jim and with Brett. So welcome, everyone. And I'm looking forward to today's session. So I wanted to start. About a year ago, we had a similar session with American Banker and with Workday. And Jim and I spent a fair amount of time, again, talking about banking transformation and digitization. And we talked a fair amount about why we believe that the pace of change would accelerate over the coming years. And I wanted to start maybe by looking back at that conversation and doing a bit of a kind of update on where we see things now compared to last year. And if you go back to our conversation last year, we really had two themes that we talked about that would drive the continued digitization of the banking industry. And those two themes were first, and foremost, confidence. When we spoke last year, we talked at length about the confidence that the banking industry had built throughout the pandemic, as it had to really react at a pace that hadn't been seen before to a changing market. So when you look at PPP, online forbearance request, online application needs, really having to change quickly to meet the needs of the market and our customers and their customers. I think at the same time, we saw a situation where banks were flush with capital. They had the investment capacity to modernize their infrastructures in a way that really allowed them to think differently about their ability to make changes and digitize their businesses and look at their transformation journeys a little bit differently. I think if you fast forward now a year later to July of 2023, in some ways the world is very much the same. We've remained in a rising rate environment up until recently, continuous increases in Fed rates. At the same time, we have a concern, albeit subsiding, around inflation, but we still have the same challenges of the uncontrolled and uncertainty around geopolitical stress and other external threats to the businesses. At the same time, we're in a very different market, certainly coming out of the challenging spring that we had, where liquidity, asset concentrations, consumer confidence have been challenged in ways that we haven't seen in many, many years. So as we look at the market today, there's really three areas that we at PwC have started to focus on as we try and simplify an already complicated environment. The first is balance sheet pressure. Clearly, there's challenges due to the rate environment, all kinds of unexpected and unprecedented challenges around deposit competition and liquidity, a rapidly changing credit environment, and capital constraints that probably weren't at the same levels as they are today, that certainly will impact companies' ability to invest in their technology environment. At the same time, we have an ever-evolving regulatory environment where supervisory expectations have changed while maybe the rules haven't since the events of the spring. The regulatory environment is one where there's clearly a case for focus going forward on safety and soundness. And all that will lead to higher costs in terms of the cost of compliance and regulatory risk management. And at the same time, we've had an additional year of customers and competitors that are thinking differently about their digital engagement models. Changes in primary relationships that we've seen, especially in the deposit space in the last 3 or 4 months. Digital experiences that have continued to evolve over the course of the past year. And most importantly, the non-bank financial segment of the market continuing to look at ways to be impactful and grow their business at the same time. But perhaps the largest change that we've seen in the past year is the emphasis on generative AI and AI in general. And we thought we'd spend a couple of minutes really talking about, from a PwC standpoint, what is generative AI, why is it important, and maybe what are some of the implications to our banking clients. So with that, I'd like to bring on Brett, one of my partners at PwC, to share some perspectives on what are we seeing related to AI. Brett?
Thank you, Peter. Generative AI is one of those exciting technologies that comes once in a career, once in a lifetime, because it has a broad-reaching applicability. And I think if you look at the case for banking, it's also true in a lot of other sectors. And that's why it's important to look at what's happening cross-sector as well as within sector. It's having a wide-ranging effect. Now, just to put it in perspective, generative AI, unlike traditional AI/ML, is based on a foundation model. It has a broad amount of knowledge and capability that affects the type of work that knowledge workers do. It affects the things that we do, whether we're driving operational efficiency, audits, anything that we do where people are typing or reading content or code as part of a workflow or part of their job. It could be enhanced or accelerated with generative AI. That's very different than traditional models that are highly tuned to specific tasks. This is a general purpose model that when you layer in your own unique data, your own unique knowledge as an enterprise, as a business, you can then make it do things that are uniquely special to you. And what's exciting about that is no matter what you do, it can be done securely, it can be done privately, and it can be done with your data in a way which augments your workforce, helps people work faster, helps them consume knowledge and documents and content, and also generate and apply automation to the work they do. So, for example, if you are processing documents of any type, say applications coming in, today you most likely have people reading those and summarizing and transcribing them into other systems, identifying risk factors, identifying missing information. It's tedious. It's a lot of work. It has to get done. It's important work. But the point is, the people evaluating applications are highly skilled people that took decades to learn everything they know and should be focused on the judgment and deciding what to do. Whereas actually the ingestion of applications, the extraction of the key elements in an application, the identification of missing data that might go back to cause an application to be rejected or sent back, or the transcription of that into a system of record that you might use to make decisions. That's something that can be done with generative AI now at scale and at speed in a way that now is more effective than having people do it. That's a very, very different place than where we've been in the last several years, where AI is as effective as people at a lot of common tasks. And then it allows the people who do the work to use the time to focus on the judgment and the accuracy, the goals of what you want AI to do, not so much on the tasks of reading, transcribing, documenting, summarizing content. So you can imagine that almost everything you do in the business, where human beings are involved and there is text and code involved, there's some opportunity to transform that work, to free up time for those experts who are highly trained and highly valuable so they can use their critical thinking, their judgment, and their business knowledge to make decisions for you, and use generative AI to do the bulk work of consuming all that content and data and providing the kinds of insights that would be helpful and automating some of those tasks. So you can see it affects everything from operations, audit and legal services, anything you can do around personalization of content. I mean, in theory, all of your customers will expect intensely personalized communications that understands as much as they can know about you and then contextualizes what they communicate to you so it feels and appears that they know you and are relevant to you and not irrelevant information that gets put in every form letter. This kind of stuff is now possible because the marginal cost of generating content, reading content, and of adapting content is going down quickly to zero. And so it's now a matter of, do you know enough about your customers to make really good communications, and then allow AI to help you do it, not so much the effort of actually generating the communications. If you look across, the reason I say this is broadly applicable is that generative AI is built on what's called a foundation model. It has a wide range of uses. And with a few patterns, you can make them applicable to a wide set of things that you do. Summarization, for example, is a capability. You can provide an arbitrarily large number of documents of any size and ask for summaries. You can ask for summaries of applications. You can ask for summaries of customer feedback, policies, regulations, anything. And the point is, it's really, really good at ingesting and comprehending these large documents and then able to summarize it in the theme and the points that matter to you. So when you set up the right context and say, here's all the regulations coming out of the US in the next 30 days. I want to know the ones that are relevant to my customers in this region, for this type of customer, for this type of thing. And it can find that very quickly from a large volume of documents. And while human beings can do that, generative AI can do it much faster. And it allows you to focus your time on what is it you need to know, not how do you find it in all these things. We're using it extensively, for example, in contract analysis, understanding where we have common terms that might be relevant, where we're missing terms, when invoices are due. We can see that in documents using generative AI at scale. Deep retrieval is the ability to look for very, very specific information, again, in wide range of documents. So while a summary might give you a paraphrasing of entire policy or regulation, deep retrieval gives you the ability to query those and look for specific things. So while you're in a given customer situation or problem or challenge, you can then dig around in those large documents without having to read them all, but ask questions of it and then have it come out from that. Transforming content. One of the really cool patterns that people do with this is they'll give it samples of other documents and say, I want to produce a new one that looks like those. When you have really good examples of your work, the way you want it to look, with your tone and your quality, and then have new input come in and then have it adapted to that, it will adapt it and create new content that looks like the old, but updated with all the new information. These are patterns that you can imagine affect multiple parts of your work, of your value chain, no matter what you do. And we see clients across this industry, as well as other industries, adapting this to drive massive productivity and speed, as well as improving quality and completeness of content. when you look within that value chain, you'll see a whole set of, sorry, we're jumping around. You'll see a whole set of areas, everything in consumer banking, consumer lending, payments, wealth investment management, and commercial lending that have areas that are hotter for this than others because they're heavily dependent on large volumes of unstructured data like text and code where they can be transformed. And I just want to kind of point out, I know, Peter, you're going to talk about this more specifically in the sector perspective, but when you're looking at these, this is not a generic capability. This is tailored to your business. So the way that we help people apply this is we focus on the examples of your own unique business knowledge, examples of your contracts and marketing content, the context of your business, the training manuals, everything you have that makes you great at what you do can be provided as context in a secure way to generative AI. And then you can ask for what you need, whether it's new marketing content or loan origination, and it can do it in your way with your data. And doing this in a way that is private and secure is a new capability. We do that in a secure way on a private cloud, for example, and then are able to adapt it with context, which is your own unique data, to produce outcome that is for your brand, for your customers, and differentiated from your competitors.
Great.
So
Thanks,
Peter,
Brett.
do you want to touch on any part of this?
Yeah, no, it's terrific. And I like your the statement that you made about augmenting your workforce. I think a lot of early conversations that we have with clients that are new to the generative AI discussion is trying to ground them in what AI or generative AI, what kinds of problems it will help to solve and what problems may be better solved by other solutions. And we've talked, I think, a fair amount about that over the course of the last several months as we've been working more and more together. But clearly, as we've thought about our own journey and where we're making investments on how we're thinking about areas where we can help our clients, we've taken a look at the broader ecosystem, as you mentioned, for banks, and started to really home in on areas around analyzing data. So marketing, loan application processes, customer service is a very common area. And looking at opportunities, as you mentioned, to auto-populate data or impute missing data or perform data consistency checks. I think if you think more on the back office side, creating and transforming information, code generation you mentioned, chatbot responses, contractual language updates. Translation is actually an interesting space, I think, in the banking industry of translating from English to another language for customer communication. So all kinds of use cases that we're seeing popping up. And, we're spending an awful lot of time here. And Jim, maybe I'll bring you on to camera here. I'm sure this is an important area of focus for Workday as well.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Appreciate it. I think before we, dive into a discussion about, Workday's approach to AI and ML, I think it's important to, kind of level set and understand, why is this so important? And just to share with you a perspective of some recent data from the World Bank, who looked at the working age population over a series of time and actually predicting what that might look like when you get as far out as 2050. Just for reference, they define the working age population as anyone age 15 to 64. But there's a couple of factors here that are really critical. First is around population aging. And you say many countries are experiencing, a significant increase in the proportion of elderly individuals in their country. This demographic shift is really primarily due to advancements in healthcare, improved living conditions, overall declining mortality rates. But as people live longer, the average rate of the population obviously increases, and that results in a larger proportion of people who are now outside that working age bracket. The second is really around declining birth rates around the world. Birth rates have continued to decrease worldwide, influenced by factors like urbanization, increased access to education, more career opportunities for females, and really just changes in social norms. So when you look at this and you combine these two factors together, the consequence is that, over time, this is going to pose a lot of challenge to different economies around the world, social systems, or anything that relies on a sufficient number of working age individuals to support that population in those countries. And one of the ways that you can mitigate that is really by investing in automation and technology to offset these labor shortages that everyone is predicting are going to happen. So, as Brett pointed out, the fact that you can do things faster in a generative AI mode with less people over, less time becomes really, really critical. So, when we look at AI and ML from a Workday perspective, it really is important to understand the details behind the capabilities that Workday leverages. And it's important for us to understand how we approach it. Workday's been building and delivering AI and ML capabilities to our customers for almost a decade. And with this in-depth experience, we think about how we implement these technologies different from anybody else. And this is really the key differentiation here. For us at Workday, the purpose of artificial intelligence and machine learning is to augment human decision making, not to replace it. And our goal is to use AI to provide workers with insights, predictions, recommendations that help them be a better version of themselves and make them a much more productive, enable them to focus on much more strategic-oriented work versus task-oriented work. And, remaining competitive is fundamentally, in our view, inseparable from AI and ML. And our vision is to deliver unrivaled competitive advantage to our customers through rapid delivery of new AI and ML-infused business capabilities. So we want to deliver AI and ML capabilities that are easy to turn on, give immediate value. So let me give you, a little bit more in depth as it applies to different parts of your organization. And really, what really sets us apart and gives us a distinct advantage is that we are basing it on first is our platform. We've been incorporating AI and ML into our platform for a long time. It's embedded within our core applications. It's part of our architecture, and it enables applications to natively leverage all the AI and ML as part of their normal business workflows. We can evolve, we can reuse that core AI across different business functions. And it really, what's really intriguing here, I think, is the fact that the AI and ML features can be treated just like any other feature or function within your human capital resources systems or your financial systems. And we have this notion of 0-day availability. And by that, I mean, it's something you turn on. It's already there. It's ready to go. You make the decision to turn it on. There's no complex, multi-month project that's needed to start using any of the AI or ML features inside of Workday. And as soon as you turn it on, it starts learning and you can start to see immediate benefits. Second, the most critical part of any successful AI and ML models is really based upon data. I mean, machine learning requires large volumes of quality data to train the models properly. And so from the beginning, we were designed as a cloud-based solution, a multi-tenant cloud solution that uses a unified data model across all of our applications. So with all customers being on the same version of Workday, all the data follows a uniform structure. And that structure provides really clean and coherent data, which they could use. And here's the real benefit, I think, is that, we have globally over 60 million individual users who are using Workday. And that represents over 600 billion transactions per year. And again, the volume of those transactions, it's clean, coherent data. And then we can leverage that data, of course, with customer permission, is unique to Workday. We have the data, we have all the models in place, and with the customer's permission, we can turn those models on for those individual customers. So we really take that clean data and use machine learning to translate it into data representations that are well suited for machine learning. And I think third, with anything related to AI, is the human-centric side of it, and that really evolves around trust. We think that for AI and ML to really deliver on the possibilities, it has to be trustworthy. It must augment humans. It cannot displace them. And in order for AI and ML to be trustworthy, that trust needs to be designed into the very foundation. So, we provide our customers with transparency, clear understanding on how the ML models are developed, how they're assessed in order to help mitigate any risks associated with their use. And when needed, we can actually provide a full audit trail of when, where, and how the data is used and what happened to it along the way, from the time the data was extracted to train the model, all the way to when it is actually purged and removed from the system. So again, the important thing here is that we keep humans at the center of everything we do. We do not apply full automation because humans are still the ultimate decision maker anywhere that AI and ML are applied within Workday. So let me take a moment and just give a couple of examples of the types of benefits we're seeing across different functions within the organization. So if you look at it from the office of the CFO and all the functions within the CFO, our focus from the beginning has really been to take customers on a journey with machine learning. And on that journey, they can eliminate efficiencies through interrogating large, high volumes amount of transactions faster. They save time by intelligently automating manual, repetitive tasks, and that ends up resulting in increased precision and accuracy. Focus on managing risk because the machine continuously detects patterns, anomalies, and surfaces areas of concern for the person in finance and for the human to actually review and make decisions throughout the accounting period and not have to wait till the end of the monthly close to detect those anomalies and make those corrections. And also, because it's tied in with our planning capabilities, it also is able to predict more accurate outcomes because we've really eliminated a lot of the manual work and intervention that goes into optimizing business processes. And really, we're accelerating that whole notion of a data-driven decision-making and forecasting. And, as data volumes continue to grow, this becomes incredibly more important. Let's turn now and look at it from a CHRO perspective. And I'll take you through this in two parts. First, really focus much more around skills and then talk about core HR functions. But Workday Skills Cloud leverages AI and ML at its core. It's the heart of our people-based system strategy. And as AI and ML is applied to the Skills Cloud, this enables organizations to optimize deployment of their workforce, elevate productivity, and guide development at scale. And by that, I mean we provide organizations with a complete understanding of the skills portfolio that they have in their workforce, where those skills gap exist, and putting people front and center in a skill-based approach. Secondly, we find it's best ways to attract new top talent to fill those skills gaps and also identify and promote growth opportunities to upskill workers to fill those gaps and retain that talent. So again, overall, what we're doing here with Skills Cloud and the employee experience is creating a very personalized, engaging experience for workers where we tailor recommendations for their skill development based on their preferences and career goals, as well as creating individual learning plans that could be setting them up to work on specific gigs within the company or mentors or job recommendations, but based upon their specific skills in their profile. When you look at it from an HR perspective, from a core HR system perspective, it comes down to really solving clear, actionable business problems in a way that optimizes the workforce to make their lives easier. And these investments manifest themselves in a couple ways, four in particular. One around increasing the efficiency of the workers so they can free up time to focus on more strategic work and provide work-life balance. Secondly, around mitigating disruptions so that workers focus on what matters most to the business. Thirdly, acting on critical insights so they can make informed decisions quickly and really revolutionize the entire workforce by transforming the talent experiences that each individual has within the company.
Thanks, Jim. I will say, I know we're going to move over to the roundtable, but Brett had mentioned augmenting the workforce. You had spent a little bit of time earlier in your remarks talking about easy to use tools to make your people more productive. And I think collectively that says a lot about, given the focus on cost across the banking industry, the importance of these tools, and the importance of getting easy to use deployable tools in the hands of people to try and drive the productivity improvements across our banking clients. So a lot of, I would think, consistency between the two conversations there. So that was great.
Yeah, and I think it really, going back to the generative AI, when you look at it from a pure machine learning capacity, obviously that's focused on, transactions, anomaly, pattern detection. And when you complement that with the generative AI capabilities and what you can do in terms of sifting through, high volumes of documents and documentation and regulations. And I think that the marriage of those two really gives, a complete AI, ML, generative AI capability to put it in the hands of people in financial services.
Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen. I think that is a great time to shift over to our roundtable discussion. I've got a couple questions here I'm going to throw out to everyone, and let's have some fun with this. So, Brett, let's start with you on the first question. How can banks leverage emerging technology such as AI to improve their operations and customer experiences?
I think it's important to recognize that a lot of the work that we do today has a high cost. The cost of providing customer service, the cost of processing loans. Each of these things has a high cost because of the number of people involved in it. And if we can do what Jim was describing, the augmentation of the workforce, if we can scale people, we can not only reduce the cost and time it takes to do some of those activities, but more importantly, start to open up more activities we could do within the same time and cost. So the ability, for example, right now to send communications to people in a templated way is fine. The ability to hyper-personalize it to the individual could be amazing. The ability for people to do self-service today works to some degree, but could be significantly better if you can provide more information and more automation behind that so people can do more of the services they need to do in an automated way. I think in almost every industry, and particularly in banking, there is interesting disruption possible from small numbers of very smart people working with AI, trying to figure out how they can do some of the things that up till now have been very labor-based. And I think this ability to relook at the work, especially back office work, finance, HR, procurement, supply chain, IT, these are high labor intensive things, plus customer service, some of the things that Peter touched on, client-facing activities, and look at how you could start to reduce the labor by reimagining the work. Frees up people to focus on providing increased customer service, improved context and content that you might want to create, and better understanding customers and understanding all the content that comes from it.
Excellent. Jim, this is kind of leading off of our following up on some of what you were talking about when you were just speaking. Anything more you'd like to add here?
I think the important thing is, when you look at it from a transaction-based standpoint, anomaly detection becomes critical. Being able to identify the patterns and the anomalies for the end user in finance and the analyst in finance, goes a long way, in terms of speeding up that whole process. But also back to Brett's point, also from a cost perspective, because so much time is spent on manually researching a lot of the anomalies or problems, being able to serve those up to an analyst to be able to act on them just speeds that entire end-to-end process of resolution to produce the financials.
Fantastic, fantastic. And Jim, actually, let me stick with you for this next question. So, what are some real life examples of successful digital acceleration executions that you've seen across the banking industry, in particular, large enterprises with legacy systems?
So I think, some of our biggest successes in financial services, and some of those we've actually worked very closely with PwC on as well, and mutual clients, is the ability to a very large organization, a regional bank, who had the majority of their systems were on legacy platforms. They needed a way to standardize what their future would look like. And I remember us having conversations with the chief accounting officer there, and he kind of brought up the point, like, I want to use Workday, okay, as the way to rationalize the future of data inside the bank. And to a lot of us that was kind of a little bit of a revelation. It's like, wait a second, this is really the strategic piece now that you want to pivot off of. And I think that's the kind of mindset for the people who are doing this really well, is to look at this as a way to really change the way the finance function works within the bank. And another example, is a very large, well-known mortgage processor. Again, redid the entire way that they interfaced with all the upstream systems, and took advantage of one of our products called Accounting Center, to be able to ingest large volumes of data, perform intelligent operations on that data, and create the necessary journal entries to feed into the downstream systems. So again, I think you need to look at it. This transformation is really a strategic. It's not, I want to do a project to replace my old general ledger. I think you have to look at it in a much more holistic way. And those that have done that have probably been the most successful.
Very, very interesting. And Brett, anything to add on this one? Jim said that they've been working with you on a couple projects. I don't know if there's more to add here.
Yeah, generally we're seeing people with generative AI look at high volume labor-based activities and look at how they can transform a process. For example, the transcription of things coming in, invoices, applications, and other into an existing system is a very powerful use case. It's not sexy or magic. It's just really brute force work. But generative AI does a nice job of extracting the key elements in documents. So no matter how it comes in, email, whether it comes in as a web form or however it comes in, people don't tend to give you input in a way that you always want it. But you can extract that content really well with generative AI and then automatically feed it into source and trusted systems and then process from there. And I see people driving out substantial amount of workload. There's one company I was working with where they had people with 25 years experience processing all this stuff. Most of the things either had missing elements and had to be sent back, or they were very low risk and could be passed right through, but they needed those very experienced people looking at them, every single one of them. But by using generative AI, parsing, summarizing, and identifying, they could triage them. And those people with the vast amount of experience only had to look at a few. The rest could be either processed directly or sent back for completeness. And it really sped up time, but it freed up the time for those very expensive, trained, experienced people so they could focus on the problems that really needed their attention. And the rest of them could be, either handled automatically or sent back for, complete input.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting. So, Peter, let me pull you in here. Don't want to leave you out. So, the Federal Reserve Bank is proposing to extend tighter rules to smaller banks, those with 100 billion to 700 billion assets, bringing them in line with the regulatory restrictions on large banks. What will these banks need to do from a technology perspective to comply with these new regulations?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mike, and thank you for that. I would start by saying, clearly any anticipated rules coming out of the events of the spring, we're all speculating on what those may or may not look like, and I certainly won't speculate on what any proposed or future rules may look like. What I would say, though, is that what we've learned over the course of the past several months is that we need to be focused as an industry on safe and sound operations across all risk stripes. I think the second point is that, one of the approaches to remediating complex regulatory matters in very complex businesses or institutions in our banking industry has been a focus on, as Brett said earlier, kind of brute force strength using people. And I think there's an acknowledgement that going forward, we need to think differently about the investments that we're making, how we're thinking about change to our organization, and where we can implement new technology that's scalable. Focusing on things like identifying risk, automating controls, monitoring activities across the bank. These are great opportunities to rethink the infrastructure of how we monitor risk. Again, whether it's financial, market, operational risk, credit risk, compliance risk, legal risk, et cetera, and really put a different lens on how we're solving problems to make sure that we're solving the very specific problem in a way that's repeatable, scalable, and standardized going forward. So not sure what the final changes, if any, will look like, but I know that there's going to be a lot of work, and we anticipate technology will be right at the center of any changes that banks and any of the affected segments might need to respond to.
And Peter, that actually kind of leads into the next question I had. So speaking about using technology and innovation, so the banking sector is often viewed as very traditional. To what extent do you think that's changing? And are banks kind of fostering this culture of innovation that's necessary? And kind of where in the bank do you think that innovation might be kind of having the biggest cultural shift?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mike. When Jim and I spoke on a similar webcast last year, we had a similar conversation around innovation. And the point I made last year, I still believe today, which is I fundamentally believe that banks are quite innovative. I think the core to any great innovator is really a great problem identifier. It's hard to solve a problem with innovative ideas if you don't really understand the problem. And I fundamentally believe that banks are aware of where there are challenges and opportunities. But execution has always been a challenge. I think we're a year further into the modernization efforts that many of our clients were undertaking last year. Again, given expense and margin pressures, some of those investments have slowed over the course of the past several months. But we're actually still bullish on innovation in banking. And as we've talked at great length on this particular webcast, we actually think there's some new tools out there in the market that are going to position our clients very well to continue to innovate and look for ways to use new technologies to transform their businesses. Brett, it's probably a better question from you. I'm not sure if you have a perspective here.
No, I particularly like the way you answered it, actually.
All right, that doesn't happen very often, but I'll take it. Great.
Excellent. All right, cool. Well, Brett, let me ask you this question then. So what steps, are banks taking to attract and retain top technology talent, do you think, to continue to drive innovation, stay ahead? And to what extent do you think they're more challenged to do that than other sectors?
It's a great question. I think, you touched on earlier the banking not always be the forefront of technology adoption. And yet cloud adoption has progressed. And I think as you look at the ability to attract talent, there's a substantial amount of talent, which is sort of cloud native technology talent. On top of that, though, there's this huge amount of energy going into generative AI and people building careers around AI. And banking has been quite innovative in its use of AI, ML in traditional settings. And now with generative AI, I see a very, very high uptake as well. People coming into the field of technology now are not looking for just a sexy job title. They are looking for work they love to do. And this is generative AI is a type of work that is really attracting talent. And so for companies that are looking to transform and to make a big bet on a sustainable long-term technology differentiation like AI, that does attract talent. This is a world where there'll never be enough people doing AI work to keep up with the amount of transformation that's occurring. And so almost every company I know is partnering and teaming with services companies. That's how we get to know them so well, to do this, because scale matters here and also best practices matter. But I think you'll find that the innovation and passion among talent today in the space of generative AI is just so high. And they are looking to go and do this in a place where they are supported, where what they do matters, and where it has an impact on the business. And so as long as it's not a side project and a science project, but really a core part of the strategic direction of a business, you're going to attract talent who likes to do this kind of work.
Really, Jim, would you concur?
Yeah, I would concur. And I think the thing that I would add on that is that the faster banks can retire and decommission legacy applications within their organizations, the higher the probability of being able to retain talent. I mean, granted, no one wants to work on those old legacy applications, but in some cases it's still a necessity because those applications exist. They still process a core portion of a bank's business. So I think the combination of, as Brett said, working with new technology, putting all the technology out there for them to consume and become part of their day-to-day job, is critical. I kind of equate it to, you go back a number of years, in the explosion, particularly in the capital markets industry of, the desire and need for quants and data scientists. We just never have enough of those. And that's still true today. And I think that even with all the AI and ML capability, there's still, very successful careers that we had around those areas.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jim. And so actually, I think we're just about out of time. So we're not going to get to the audience questions today, but definitely we will follow up with everyone that put in a question today. Very much appreciate you putting in those questions. This has been, I think this is a great note to end on. Really interesting discussion, important, hot topic. So I want to thank Peter, Brett, and Jim all for being here today. And of course, the audience for being here. We'll be sending you a follow-up email in the next day or two that'll have a link to a recording of this event. So that will be wending its way into your inbox. Keep an eye out for that. And with that, I think I will officially wrap it up. Wish everyone a wonderful rest of the day. And I hope you'll join us again here very soon.